Chelsea Clinton is here this morning with her own campaign. She is teaching kids how they can help solve the planet's toughest problems. We watched her grow up in the White House. She is now a mother, vice chair of the Clinton Foundation, and a first-time author. Her new book is called It's Your World. Get informed, get inspired, and get going. We are pleased to welcome Chelsea Clinton to Studio 57. Good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. Good morning.
It's good to have you here.
Welcome. Good morning, Gail.
Morning,
Lots to talk about.
Yes, thank you. It's my most important title by far.
That's right.
It's Your World. Get informed, get inspired, and get going. Why a first book addressed to children?
Well, when I talk to kids, I'm always so struck by how curious kids are about the world around us. And I think how much more perceptive and attentive they are to what's happening than adults may give them credit for. And so I wanted to write a book about some of the biggest issues in our world, particularly those that fall heavily on kids, but also to share inspiring stories of some kids who are doing something about deforestation, about hunger, about child marriage, to hopefully inform and inspire kids that we can all make a difference.
Have Mom and Dad had time to read it?
Yes.
They have,
It's 400 pages, Chelsea Clinton.
402, I think.
402 pages, yes.
Yes, they did read it, and my husband was so supportive. I'm really grateful that Mark read many versions and gave his unvarnished feedback.
But I'm thinking you were a different kind of kid. I love in the book you have a letter that you wrote at the age of 5 years old, to President Reagan.
Yes.
Because you were upset about a trip that he was planning to take. So even at 5 o'clock, you were very, even at the age of 5, you were very aware.
Well,
tell us about that, this letter and why you wrote it.
Yes, and there are some spelling mistakes.
That's okay.
I sheepishly claim now. Well, the first thing I remember learning how to read was the newspaper. I loved reading the newspaper, and this was back before there were websites or apps. It was the old-fashioned kind that sort of ink stained our hands. And I loved reading the newspaper because it gave me access to what was happening in the world so I could make up my own mind about what I wanted to see more of or what I wanted to see less of, what I wanted to change. And my parents were really supportive of that. And I read in the newspaper that President Reagan was planning a state visit to Germany, and he was going to go to Bitburg Cemetery. And I didn't think an American president should go and pay his respects to a place where Nazis were buried.
You were 5, Chelsea.
So I was 5. Yeah. So I wrote this letter, and I also included my favorite sheet of stickers, rainbow and heart stickers, as a gesture of goodwill to President Reagan, so he didn't feel like I was antagonizing him. And I never heard back, and he still went. And I was very disappointed, but at least I had tried. And as we were talking earlier, Gail, we have an adage in my family, it's always better to get caught trying. And I knew my parents were as proud of me for writing the letter than if I'd gotten a response or anything else. And that meant a lot to me, and I hope to give that same gift to my daughter.
I know you still write letters, and one of the things that came out when all the State Department released all your mother's emails was something you wrote about Haiti after the earthquake. And you were really direct and emphatic in that email. You said, if we do not quickly change the organization, thousands, a management delivery paradigm on the ground, we could confront tens of thousands of children's deaths. How much are you sort of a reality check for your parents, like eyes and ears on the ground? I read that and I said, wow, she's like a reporter on the ground for her parents, being like, we got to move on this. I've seen this with my own eyes.
Well, you'd have to ask my parents how much of a reality check I am. But certainly, I do share my opinions. It's probably not surprising since the first thing I learned to read was the newspaper. And we've been talking about issues in our community or our world for as long as I can remember. So in many ways, that is just the continuation of us talking about Bitburg Cemetery 30 years ago. And I'm really grateful that my parents have always expected me to have an opinion, but also expected me to have sort of the evidence and data to back up my opinion and my argument. And that's a gift they gave me a long time ago that hopefully they still feel good about having instilled in me.
You talk too in the book about the things you worried about as a kid, you still worry about as an adult.
Absolutely.
And now you're speaking to children around the country because you said they're really more interested than we give them credit for in all the issues.
I completely agree with that. And now, having been out across the country talking to middle school students and some older students and some younger students across the country, you know, kids are wanting to know what they can do to fight climate change. They want to know what they can do to fight homelessness, as Nora and I were talking about earlier. So I'm incredibly optimistic that our youngest Americans are thinking really seriously about serious problems and what they can each do to solve them.
Let's talk about the campaign and the Benghazi testimony, which is coming up. What do you think your mother has to accomplish there?
Well, Charlie, as I've said before, I'm not a pundit. I'm a daughter. I think every opportunity my mom has, she proves again and again why she should be our next president. I know I'm very biased, and I actually think I'm even more biased now as a mom than as a daughter, because I feel like I have a different stake in the future because of my daughter, Charlotte. And so I have no doubt on Thursday she will kind of be remarkable, and that Americans will really see why I so strongly believe she should be our next president.
But your mother has said, and the campaign has said, they think the committee has become politicized.
Well, I think we'll see what happens on Thursday.
So what advice are you giving her as she goes into the campaign, Ms. Letter Writer? Are you saying if they ask you this, you need to say this, and if they go there, you need to go there? Because I'm sure you two talk about it.
We do talk, but we mainly...
With what you want to share with us, Chelsea, at the table.
We really mainly talk about Charlotte and our family. I think because she has so many advisors who kind of know this terrain better than I do.
And I know
but she only has one daughter, and she only has one granddaughter, and I want to create and protect that space for our family. And I'm sure you've seen this, Nora. I see my mother so much more now than I did before Charlotte, which is such a gift to see her as a grandmother, and that's how I spend most of my time and energy with her.
It's fair to say your mother was wanting a grandchild very much.
Oh, yes. Did she tell you, Charlie?
Yes,
she told
often.
anyone and everyone who asked that question, publicly and privately.
And I know it's all politics, but sometimes they say such unkind things in the political arena about your mom. And as her daughter, and one of her staunch defenders, how do you take that in? Have you just developed a thick skin? Do you just say, do you disregard it? What do you do?
Well, I think I do have a thick skin. I mean, I don't remember a time when people weren't attacking my parents. So in some ways, I think as I grew up, I developed a thick skin. And I also know my mom, and I think it's so much more important to look at kind of what people do and how they lead their lives and what's happening in the echo chamber. And I certainly hope to teach that to my daughter, and I hope that that's something that generally Americans are doing.
What do you think if Joe Biden gets in the race?
Well, I don't know. I think we'll have to see. As my mom has said, that's very much up to the vice president to make what he thinks is the right choice for himself, for his family, and for our country.
And you and Ivanka Trump, both really strong women and successful women in your own right, have you two managed to remain friends since both your parents aren't always so nice to each other?
Oh, I love Ivanka.
Yeah, me too.
And our friendship is so much more important than anything that happens in politics. And I think probably anyone and everyone could understand that. And so certainly I'm so happy for Ivanka. You know, she and Jared are expecting their third child. I can't wait to meet the newest member of her family. And I just am so grateful to be her friend, and I'm grateful that I know she feels the same about me.
Yeah. So you don't call her and say, could you ask your dad to stop talking?
We don't talk about that.
Got it. Chelsea Clinton, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much,
We're excited to have you at the table today.